When one is horrible, it means that there is nothing that is objectively good and progressive that will come out of such individual.
If you have been convicted of an offense before and you have been pardoned, and anybody is trying to bring that up against you and calling you a convict, you have the power to sue that person for defamation.
Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen by all to have been manifestly done.
Every citizen has a right and every citizen has an obligation.
That a plea of ultra-virus acquit or convict is very different from the plea of pardon.
Trespass is that act that interferes with the peaceful.
No matter how minute
this, right?
No
matter how minute.
Who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Hello out there, you are welcome to another fresh episode of the program Justify Nigeria on ACNN television, reaching from Abuja. On today's episode, our subject of discussion will be on the extradition in international jurisprudence. My name is Anozie, so your anchor. The word jurisprudence derives its name from the Latin term jurisprudential, which means the study, knowledge, or science of law. Scholars of jurisprudence seek to explain the nature of law in its most general form and provide a deeper understanding of legal reasoning, analogy, legal systems, legal institutions, and the role of law in society. Modern jurisprudence tends to focus on principles of natural law, civil law, and the law of nations. Some weeks ago, the news of Biafra Nation agitator, who is also the leader of indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, coming back into the country to continue his trial went viral. Similarly, the attempt to bring back into the country Chief Sunday Adeniyi Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday Igboho, still rages on. Further to this, the human rights lawyer Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, has argued that Sunday Igboho cannot be extradited to Nigeria without court process. What does the law say about extradition of international jurisprudence? Is Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, position on this matter right in the eyes of the law? What will be the fate of these agitators? To explain and bring out all the legal rudiments of all this, I'm now being joined in the studio with Barrister Blessing Adeyuma. She is the manager legal and corporate services at Machine and Equipment Corporation Africa and also a member of the UNTUBA here in Abuja. You're welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Counsel, the issue in our country is something that, whether legal or general sense, is something that we have to talk about.
Definitely.
Now, but before we delve totally into that, we talk about jurisprudence. Please, can you tell our viewers what legal jurisprudence means before we can now go to the heart of our discussion?
Okay, thank you very much. First off, like you have rightly said, jurisprudence, especially talking about it in legal context, jurisprudence is essentially the study, the science of law. So it's basically talking about the theories of law and how they can be interpreted and applied to regular discourse. Okay. So besides having the law, you are thinking of theory, you are studying this law beyond the letters of the law. So that is basically what jurisprudence is as regards to legal context. It means
you deep down, you go in deeper sense of what it is, exactly. Not just on the periphery, on the surface.
Exactly.
That's what it means.
Yes.
Now we are talking about extradition. What does that extradition mean in law?
Okay, so extradition basically means a process where a fugitive is surrendered by.
So what do you mean by fugitive? Because there's some of our viewers out there, you have to bring it to the, understanding of all our viewers. So okay. What do you mean by fugitive?
So a person who is termed to be a criminal in normal parlance, a criminal who is, I'm going to give a scenario okay. for everybody to understand. If a criminal who is in a different country, saying a criminal who is a national of Nigeria, but has committed an offense in Nigeria, but then is somewhere outside Nigeria, say Cameroon. Okay. And the Nigerian government wants to repatriate this person to be tried or to be sentenced, whatever it is. Now, the process of bringing back this criminal from another nation into Nigeria to be tried or to be convicted is the process called extradition.
Extradition, that's just what it means.
Yes.
So if it doesn't matter, you just cited an African country, even if it's a European country, anywhere
country
in the world,
at all.
in the world, provided the person must have committed something here in Nigeria, maybe he wants to be tried or maybe he jumped bail, there is need to bring him back here, and that process is what we know as extradition in law. Thank you very much. Then are there legal steps to be taken in this extradition?
Yes, very well, of course. For every legal process, there are always procedures. I mean, the law is very, very calculated and organized. You cannot just go and jump into US and pick up someone and bring them back to Nigeria. No, there are procedures for extradition. And there are a lot of extradition treaties. So Nigeria, using Nigeria as a case study, Nigeria has extradition treaties, which is like an agreement with a certain country.
Because I was about asking that treaty. So when you mean treaty, you mean agreement between one country and another. Okay,
yes.
All right, go
so ahead. It's more like an extradition agreement for both countries, stipulating how extradition processes would be conducted back and forth for both countries. And so such extradition treaties usually stipulate the procedures that must be followed for extradition to be termed legally done. Where, for example, there is no extradition treaty between both countries, then that country itself must have its own extradition act that would govern extradition processes in its country.
Okay, where the treaties or the agreements, so to say, between those countries did not spell out on how this extradition process will be done, the country must have their, that's what you're trying to explain.
Usually countries have their own extradition act. Nigeria has an extradition act.
Okay.
And if for any reason we want to extradite a fugitive back to Nigeria and we do not have a treaty with such a country, then our extradition act would come to play.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So for the fact that Nigeria doesn't have any, let's say for example, US or Britain, and there's a fugitive there, he said there is no treaty. That does not, provided Nigeria has extradition act, the person must be brought back.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the processes as stipulated in the extradition act of that country also would be brought to play.
Yes. I know you've explained this, but for quick understanding again, who is a fugitive so that we'll carry along? Yes.
So a fugitive would be someone who has been charged with a crime. If not charged, maybe convicted, but then absconded.
Okay, he didn't serve his term.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now we say a fugitive, according to extradition, using extradition, the concept of extradition, a fugitive in this term would be a person who has been charged for an offense or for a crime, a person who has been charged and tried. First of all, there are categories to it. Okay. You have been charged, but not tried. Okay. There is that. Now, you have been charged and tried, and maybe convicted, but then you have absconded.
You did not serve that sentence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there are those, like you rightfully said at some point, there are those who charged, were on bail, but then they absconded. Okay,
jumping off bail, of course, that person can be a fugitive. If someone jumps bail.
Because you have already been charged, and then you are on bail. I mean, when you are on bail, one of the bail conditions stipulates that you do not jump bail. So the moment you jump bail, automatically you have become a fugitive. Okay. And I think there are a lot of them, but then these are people you put in this category as fugitives as extradition is concerned.
So the step you just now mentioned, apart from explaining the fugitive, is that there must be an agreement between one country and Nigeria, for example.
Yes.
But however, where there is no treaty,
there's no treaty,
that of the country will prevail. Maybe, for example, Nigeria has the Fugitive Extradition Act. That will now come to play. That is what you're saying.
Exactly. If the fugitive is in Nigeria and the requesting state owns the fugitive. You understand?
Yes, maybe an American now is in Nigeria.
Is in Nigeria.
And they are requesting
that a fugitive be extradited back to the US.
Yes.
Exactly. And there is no imagining that there is no extradition treaty between the Nigeria and the US. Now the Nigerian Extradition Act will come to play because it has to follow the laid down procedures. You cannot just come and pick up someone and take back, because there are a lot of provisions in the law that needs to be considered.
Okay, Brother Blessing, this is becoming interesting. And when we come back, we are going to explain to us some of those steps, because we just outlined them, and look at the contemporary things happening in Nigeria and how we can move forward. Please, viewers, do join us again. Hello, you are welcome to the speaker on ACNN television, reaching you from Abuja. The speaker is a program where we treat some topical issues happening around our environment. On today's segment, we'll be looking at normal Nigeria or abnormal Nigeria. My name is Anozichi Nomso. The word normal simply means that something is actually what it should be. We have to get that clear. When something is normal, it means that the thing is in conformity with laid down procedures, rules, and regulations. In other words, when a nation is normal, it means that such a nation is moving in a right and useful direction. Of course, one need not to be reminded that the opposite of normality is abnormality. May I pause at this juncture and salute Nigeria, our dear country, and also ask her very few fundamental questions. Mother Nigeria, how are you? Will you be great again? Will you be normal again? What happened to you? Why do you now feel very comfortable allowing injustice prevailing over justice? What are you waiting for? Wouldn't you rise and fight against these children of darkness so that you can get back to your feet and become great again? I weep on a daily basis anytime I see an abnormal Nigeria where killings and spilling of innocent blood is now commendable instead of condemnable. I weep when I see an abnormal Nigeria where we celebrate the activities of bandits by paying them ransom to release our loved ones in captivity. Lord, in your mercy. In a situation where 48 people were killed and over 300 houses and food banks burnt in Zango Kataf of Kaduna State is an example of an abnormal Nigeria. When 3 policemen were gunned down on their duty post by unarmed gunmen in Enugu State is a clearer picture of an abnormal Nigeria. Available statistics revealing that gunmen usually kill 1,031 Nigerians on a monthly basis are a perfect example of an abnormal Nigeria. The kidnapping of the mother of the secretary to the state government of Bayelsa is another example of an abnormal Nigeria. A woman voting multiple times for the ruling party, All Progressive Congress, APC, in the just concluded local government elections in Lagos State is a perfect example of an abnormal Nigeria. In a situation where kidnappers in FCT collect ransom through banks and 5 big banks in Nigeria loaning customers money totaling the sum of 50 trillion in 5 years is another fact that establishes that we are living in an abnormal Nigeria. Kaduna bandits collecting 50 million ransom and holding back 87 students of Baptist Bethel Secondary School is another evidence to believe that we are living in abnormal Nigeria. Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, telling a judge in an open court before the world that the federal government did not stop Nigerians from using Twitter, but rather placing a ban on Twitter users, is another form of summoning Nigeria into a classroom of Confucian conference with Abubakar Malami as the tutor. Because I'm yet to understand the difference between banning of something and stoppage of something. I've always said this in different fora, especially on this platform, and I will continue to say it, that whenever I see old people telling lies, I begin to suffer from a heavy moral burden that makes me to practically run away from them in order to avoid demonic and corrupt contamination. May I at this point advise the federal government, if they will listen, that arresting Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Igboho and charging them to court is not the utmost priority of Nigeria, and as such, not a solution to our problem. Even if at the end of the day, both of them are convicted and sentenced accordingly for whatever offense, the killings, banditry, and other economic problems of Nigeria will not cease. Secondly, the refusal of the federal government to pronounce and proclaim these bandits, kidnappers, and Boko Haram as terrorists, but was very fast, like private jets, enough to proclaim such to indigenous people of Biafra, that's IPOB, and other separatist groups, can never be a solution to the problem of Nigeria. It is very unfortunate and shameful at once that lawyers who are supposed to be ministers in the temple of justice were refused access to the courtroom during Nnamdi Kanu's trial on 26th day of July 2021. It is so disheartening that Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer was refused access to see his clients. How can it be that the government gave an excuse of failure in logistics as a reason why Nnamdi Kanu cannot be brought to the court to continue his trial? How can it be that some innocent citizens who came to witness the trial of Nnamdi Kanu were arrested for nothing, while kidnappers and bandits are being rewarded on a daily basis with millions of naira for killing, raping, and molesting Nigerian citizens? Nigeria is not only suffering from the disease of abnormality, but also suffering from schizophrenia. It is high time Nigeria woke up from her slumber and begin to get things right. In order to justify Nigeria, I therefore speak, until our leaders begin to rise up to render adequate service to humanity and get concerned with the negative happenings in the country and think about how best and fast to solve the problems, bearing in mind that good governance, transparency, and accountability is a right step and perfect way of bringing positive change, where peace, justice, security, economic growth, and perfect communal relationship will exist among us. We shall continue to live in an abnormal Nigeria instead of a normal Nigeria. My name is Anozie Chinomso. I just want to speak. Hello, glad to know that you are still there, and we are still here in the studio with Barrister Blessing Adenyuma. Counsel, before we went on break, you are trying to tell us the steps on which, country that has this extradition treaty have to do, and you have pointed out that it contains on the Extradition Act. Now, moving forward, looking at what is happening in Nigeria, yes, these agitators, we have that of the eastern one called Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the IPOB and all that, and we heard a few weeks ago that he was brought back. We didn't know whether he's arrested under law. You're a lawyer to educate us more on that. Well, do you think that the process by which he brought as a lawyer on points of law to our viewers, did Nigeria follow that act?
Thank you very much. As for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the head agitator of the IPOB,
that's indigenous people of Biafra.
Yes. Yeah. His extradition back to Nigeria was flawed in so many ways legally.
It just was happening legally on points of law. Why? Let's hear you.
Okay, so first of all, seeing that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu had been charged sometime in 2015 and he was released on bail sometime in 2017.
That's correct.
He's someone that can be referred to as an extradited person. He's under the category of people that can be liable to extradition because there is a charge against him already. Now, but the process for extradition,
explanation of a fugitive, that means he can be categorized as fugitive. Remember he jumped bail.
He jumped bail.
He can be seen as fugitive.
Yes.
Please continue. Yes.
Yes. Nnamdi Kanu is already a fugitive in this regard.
Yes.
So, yes, he's liable to be extradited back to Nigeria. But we see that he was allegedly arrested in Kenya, saying that the Kenyan government is failing to take responsibility for his arrest. He was allegedly arrested in Kenya. And upon his arrest, we see that, okay, Kenya is actually a country in Eastern Africa, in Eastern Africa. So what binds Nigeria does not currently have an extradition treaty with Kenya.
With Kenya, as it stands now.
As it stands.
Yes.
So like I had earlier said, what would come to play is the Kenyan Extradition Act.
Okay, in this circumstance now.
Yes, what will come to play is the Kenyan Extradition Act, and this Kenyan Extradition Act was derived from the Geneva Convention. So most of what was provided in the Geneva Convention is what is replicated in the Kenyan Extradition Act. And one of the provisions of the Kenyan Extradition Act is that or many of the provisions actually stipulating the procedure is that there has to be a request from the country
of the fugitive.
Of the fugitive. There has to be a request.
A formal request.
A formal request from the minister of that country, or
the High Commissioner, ambassador, whatever.
Exactly, or a consular officer or diplomatic officer, whatever, from that country to the Kenyan state government, stating that this person is a fugitive and needs to be surrendered back to Nigeria. And it also stipulates, and then there are certain documents that must accompany a request. There has to be an original or authenticated copy of the charge for which the person was charged, or the conviction or the sentence, if the person has been convicted and sentenced,
be attached on that
to
request.
Be attached to the request, because you cannot just request for a person to be repatriated back to a country without actually showing the country that actually this person is a fugitive and should be surrendered back to the country. And then you should also have attached a statement of the offense. Then you should also attach an authenticated copy of the law that stipulates the sentence for which the crime should be imposed with, or
it's a whole lot.
A whole lot. And then a proper description of the person. All these things should be contained in the request to that nation. And then not just making this request, afterwards that the request is made, then the minister of the Kenyan government, this is what their act stipulates, the minister of the Kenyan government would now write to a magistrate to issue a warrant. Now the magistrate would now go ahead to issue a warrant of arrest against this fugitive. This is what would have him arrested in that country. Now, not just it goes beyond this. So this person is arrested, this fugitive is arrested and brought before that magistrate of the Kenyan government. So now Nnamdi Kanu in this instance should have been brought before a magistrate of the Kenyan government.
After this request and all the accompanied documents have been sent to Kenya authorities.
Exactly. Now the magistrate would now have to hear the matter, even taking evidence. This is what is contained in their Extradition Act. And then afterwards, if the magistrate now remands Nnamdi Kanu, he would only be surrendered back to Nigeria after a period of 15 days. These are the laws as stipulated in the
none of them was followed, and that's why you started that in fact, it was a fraud. You stated that, and these are your reasons.
Exactly.
None of this was.
So as we see, none of these was complied with. Hence, we can legally say that Nnamdi Kanu's extradition. In fact, we shouldn't even call it an extradition.
Yes.
It was more or less.
One of the learned counsel, like you say, in fact, he was abducted. Some people say kidnapped.
I would have said yes. I am of the opinion that he was abducted, because as it is right now, the Kenyan state government is not taking responsibility for his arrest. The Nigerian state government is insisting that the Kenyan state government extradited him back to Nigeria. So exactly how does this play? Who should we believe? Who should we ignore? These are the questions that come to bear when you look at all of these things. But as I had earlier stated, his supposed extradition was totally illegal because it was flawed in many ways.
Now, do you think is there any option in law for Mazi Kanu against federal government, knowing fully well that the federal government of Nigeria did not comply?
Of course.
Of
course. I believe that when he consults with his lawyers, first of all, he was not brought here legally.
That's number one.
Number one, he was his repatriation. I do not want to call it extradition. His repatriation back to Nigeria was not legal. Number one. Number two, Mazi Kanu has alleged that he was detained in Kenya for 8 days, where he was tortured. This already flouts his fundamental rights.
Under Chapter 4.
Yes. So, I mean, there is so much he can leverage on this. But then it's so amusing that nobody is seeming to take responsibility for it. But I believe strongly that if Mazi Kanu can prove his case, stating that he was detained for 8 days and then he was tortured,
yes,
he has a good case against the Nigerian government.
Now you remember in the course of this, Femi Falana Senator of Nigeria, the learned Sek, made mention as regards to Sunday Igboho that they cannot be brought to Nigeria if proper things is not followed. Is he right in law by what he said? I mean, the statement of learned senior.
Of course.
Why do you say so?
Chief Sunday Adeyemo, as also known as Sunday Igboho, was arrested in Cotonou, Benin Republic. And at the time of his arrest, there was no charge against him here in Nigeria. There was, the most we heard from the news, it was that DSS had raided his home and there was that was the most we heard. So there was no formal charge against him here in Nigeria. And his arrest in Cotonou was totally illegal.
Yes.
So any form of extradition would have been totally illegal and flawed, because, as I had earlier stated, one of the conditions for extradition is that a person should have been charged. There should have been a charge against the person in the requesting state. There should have been a charge, or he should have been convicted of some sort, or he should have even been tried. Maybe he jumped bail or something.
And nothing like that.
Nothing of the sort was leveled against Sunday Igboho. So his arrest was totally illegal, and that is why we were very happy as lawyers to find that the request for his extradition was denied by the Benin Republic government, because any extradition based on that arrest would have totally been illegal, because you cannot arrest a person and want to extradite him in the hope that a request would be made. At the time that he was arrested, no request was made.
No request.
So even up to now.
You've just made that point. But before we go, we have just a few minutes to stop this program. These agitators, Nnamdi Kanu and Igboho and their cohorts, their actions, does it amount to treason? In just a few minutes before we end this program.
Personally, I would not say the amount to treason.
What is treason specifically? So exactly. What's treason?
So treason has been defined by the laws of Nigeria. Well, let's using the criminal code as a study point. Section 37 of the criminal code stipulates that any attempt to use force to basically to try to overhaul the government, using force to overhaul the president or a governor of a state, would amount to treason. Now, Section 41 now comes to say any intention, any person who has the intent of using force or in a bid to overhaul the government, levying war in a bid to overhaul a state government, would amount to treasonable felonies. Now, Mazi Kanu and Chief Sunday Igboho are people who would call self-determinationists, secessionists, more like. And I do not find anywhere in the Nigerian Constitution that incriminates a person from wanting a better government for themselves. As from the definition of treason and treasonable felonies,
none of them could be found.
I have not found anyone that actually, any of their actions that would constitute an element of treason or treasonable felonies. So in my opinion as a lawyer, I do not believe that the action of Sunday Igboho or Nnamdi Kanu would amount to treason, which he was even charged with. I believe he was charged with that sometime in 2015 of treason or treasonable felonies. I think he was also charged with, he's charged for illegal possession of firearms, yes. I think I agree with that, and some other charges. And I believe that the court, in its wisdom, would should strike out some of these charges, because I believe that the citizens of Nigeria are entitled to want a better government for themselves, not trying to overhaul the government, but trying to cede from it. We saw that it happened with the Bakassi Peninsula. They ceded from Nigeria to Cameroon, and I did not see that it became, anybody tagged it as treason or treasonable felony. So this is my opinion as a lawyer.
Her opinion as a lawyer is that Sunday Igboho or Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, their actions does not constitute either treason or treasonable felony. Want to appreciate you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you
so much for coming. And when next we call you out of your busy schedule, I hope you oblige us.
No, of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
In a sovereign state, it is expected that the standard of life of citizens must be guaranteed. Where dividends of democracy are being enjoyed and controlled only by the hands of few is totally unacceptable. Nigeria is a very wonderful country that is fully endowed with all natural resources, and as such, all must be treated fairly. If bandits and kidnappers can be summoned for a negotiation, it is also equitable for the government to listen to the humble cry of these agitators instead of filing charges against them in court. It is therefore advised that government should ensure that lives and properties of citizens are properly protected, for where this is guaranteed, peace and economic stability is inevitable. This is where we draw the curtain on today's episode of Justify Nigeria. Join us same time, same station, another fresh episode of the program. Until then, this is Anoze Chinom, so wishing you the very best, and bye for now. When one is horrible, it means that there is nothing that is objectively good and progressive that will come out of such individual.
If you have been convicted of an offense before and you have been pardoned, and anybody is trying to bring that up against you and calling you a convict, you have the power to sue that person for defamation.
Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen by all to have been manifestly done.